George Russell has been linked to a sensational move to Red Bull, but it seems like the cards are being held by Max Verstappen and his former teammate Sergio Perez. In a very interesting and rather shocking scenario, we might witness a tectonic shakeup that will see Perez suited up for Mercedes and Russell for Red Bull, reviving the old fights but in reversed roles. With this in mind, what needs to happen for Perez and Russell to see new suits being fitted, and more importantly, how big is the Verstappen factor in this? One of the most interesting and rather controversial silly seasons is ahead of us, and paradoxically enough, it can be started by the team that used to dominate the sport in the first 2 years of the current regulated era, Red Bull. The downfall of the Austrian team has seen the four-time world champion Verstappen put in a very difficult position, having to think about his future outside of Red Bull. Marco said it himself, the contract clause is something that needs to be thought of very deeply when the summer break comes, because if Max is not in the top 2 or top 3 drivers, he will have an option to leave the team on his own terms. And if this happens, there are 2 teams who are definite suitors for his signature, Aston Martin and Mercedes. You would think that Max might want to play it safe because of the proven engine domination Mercedes had in the turbo hybrid era, but times are changing and so are the perspectives of the drivers. Aston Martin brought proven winners behind closed doors like Honda and Adrian Newey, and in combination with the new facilities that have been built in Silverstone, we might be in for a massive surprise from 2026 onwards. This would prompt Lawrence Stroll to go all in for Verstappen, and if you put yourself in the shoes of the four-time world champion, it's going to be very hard to say no to such an offer. Money aside, which is a difficult task to do because the reported offer is $300 million over 3 years, Verstappen will be lured to a situation in which the pure development of events at Aston Martin will lead him to leave Red Bull, not to mention the fact that he will have a desired teammate in Lance Stroll, one that will prove to be a zero challenge to beat compared to his previous teammates. So let's say that Verstappen pulls the trigger and Red Bull is left without their leader. It's going to be an even bigger shock compared to the one Hamilton did to Mercedes, because they are coming out of a championship winning streak and they don't have a prodigy ready to replace him. Yep, Hadjar showed some potential in Racing Bulls, but that's probably not enough to be promoted to Red Bull. Maybe in a desperate move that the Austrian team would be forced to make in order to leave space for Arvin Lindblad in the junior team. What Red Bull would probably do is focus on the proven race winner, one like Russell. This has already been a topic in the inner circles of the Austrian squad, because there have been talks between Horner and Russell regarding a potential collaboration if things go in a way that they can't command. For example, if Mercedes decides to go for Verstappen, or if Verstappen leaves Red Bull, the Austrian team will have a massive need for an experienced driver to lead the charge from 2026 onwards. An interesting story is the competition between Russell and Antonelli. Despite being a rookie, the Italian driver started to put himself on the map, and if these strong results continue, then Russell's position in Mercedes could be compromised. This might be one of the reasons why his contract is not extended yet, and why the situation might not be as fully under control as he and Wolff are trying to convince the media. Martin Brundle raised suspicions on this matter, and elaborating on this further, the Sky F1 pundit said, "Mercedes say we are his management as well as his employer, and we'll sort it out later in the year. It would put his mind to rest, I'm sure, if he had a contract. A driver of his stature would normally be signed up well before the last few months of the contract. That is just a fact. Everybody seems quite calm about it. I think it's unusual. Maybe they want to hold his feet to the fire a little bit." All of this brings us to a very interesting point, a potential transfer of Sergio Perez to Mercedes. The Mexican driver has been under a lot of scrutiny because of the poor results he manifested in Red Bull, but seeing how Lawson and Tsunoda are performing in the RB21, it's quite obvious that the car was the issue all the way along. Yet Perez might need to improve a little bit with his adaptation, but a driving style is something very unique, and not many drivers on the grid are able to fully adapt to something that doesn't fit them at all. So with Cadillac expressing high wishes to sign Perez, it became obvious that Checo will be a hot property once again. The options are there for Mercedes, and according to motorsport.com, there is a strong chance that he could end up in the Brackley-based squad if a cascade of events is started and they see that Antonelli has a lot more potential compared to Russell. So far, the Brit has shown very mature signs of being a world champion if given the right opportunity, but the pressure from Antonelli is rising with every race that passes. What is worth mentioning is that Perez was already denied the Mercedes seat by Toto Wolff back when the Hamilton bombshell dropped, and it was quite obvious that the suggestion back then was made based on his performance in Red Bull. Now, this has changed because of the recent situation with other drivers like Lawson and Tsunoda showing to the Formula One world that the car is not exactly as it seems and the performance is not as good on average as you would normally assume. Be that as it may, the interest for Perez is not shown from Mercedes only, as reports state that initial talks have been held, which definitely suggests that the Brackley-based squad will think of him as a serious candidate if things go in a different direction from what they had planned. Cadillac is the number one choice for the seat of Perez, and it's quite obvious that the American team knows the value of Perez outside of racing as well. The popularity that he has in the States combined with the sponsorships that he'll bring are clear indicators that we're going to be looking at a very interesting duo forming up. Andretti, the former F1 champion and the director of Cadillac, suggested that Perez is one of the strongest options to be signed for his team because of all the other factors that are falling into place. Talks between those two have been held during the Miami GP, and it does seem like it's only a matter of time before these two announce their collaboration sooner rather than later. But on the other hand, Perez might be smart to wait for the development of events in Mercedes and the sudden challenge that appeared in front of him, compete for race wins and be part of a team that is likely to be a favourite in the newly regulated era. Of course, the role that Perez will have here is vastly different from the one compared in Cadillac, where he'll be the lead driver, but I'm sure he would jump at the chance to sign for Mercedes next to Antonelli, who will likely be the leader in the foreseeable future. And a very surprising candidate emerged from the dark: Alpine. The arrival of Flavio Briatore and the replacement of Jack Doohan with Colapinto have gone on to show that the French squad is not 100% sure with the current lineup they have. What this does go to show is that they will be looking for a solid and experienced driver when they have the opportunity, and there are lots of factors that Perez possesses that could help them in the long term. For starters, they expect to fight at least in the midfield because of the Mercedes engines, and they do need a lot of funding to develop their program. Knowing Briatore, one of the oldest foxes in the history of the sport, he will do anything it takes to sign Perez because he understands the value of the Mexican driver aside from racing. It would be interesting to see what two former Red Bull drivers will be able to do as teammates in the French team, but nevertheless, Mercedes is still a realistic option for Perez if these two projects fall apart. The only question is, will Verstappen choose Aston Martin as his next team, and will this provoke Mercedes to go with a classic young veteran duo in the newly regulated season? With all this in mind, what do you think about the potential opportunity for Russell to sign a contract with Red Bull, leading to Mercedes bringing in a seasoned driver like Perez? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, have a look at the video that's appearing on your screen right now.